vicious loop. And you're going to find all the things to continue to justify pulling away and not leaning in. And it's like, okay, again, going back to those stories, you will find the evidence that will prove you right. But is that what I want for your life?
Cognitive bias. Welcome to the Phase 4 podcast, inspired by Vishen Lakhiani and Ajit Nawalkar, co-founders of EverCoach, a division of Vine Valley. In this podcast, we speak to coaches and creatives about where they were, where they are, and where they are going. This is an intersection of what we focus on expands, and your story is your superpower. Today is Stu Murray. He is a men's coach and the founder of Brothr, where they do retreats for men. And he's really into teaching emotional intelligence, the emotional side of it. So today we're going to talk about that and much more. And Stu, welcome to the podcast.
AP, thanks, man. It's an honor.
Yeah, me too. I'm grateful. I maybe didn't mean to spoil it, emotional intelligence part, but I always kind of begin with just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up in this space?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my background actually is in public education. So I worked 7 years as an educator. I went in there 1 year and started teaching, and it chewed me up and said, I'm either leaving this or I'm changing it. And I got in there and I did some really interesting stuff around engaging at-risk youth, particularly young boys who were falling through the cracks, developed alternative education. My belief is that each kid is the curriculum, and it's our duty to bring them to life, then to really nurture the heart and the curiosity and the creativity of every child. And I think that's been something that's sucked out of us and, is very apparent in the world that we live in, that we outsource our decision-making. And so my time in education really formed a really interesting foundation about who we are as individuals and how we move about in the world. And I'm inspired, my mission within education was to really give each child their sovereignty, their capacity to make decisions and lead lives from their hearts. And it's from that same ethos and that same place that I lead men today. And what got me onto that is actually leaving education when COVID was coming on. It was very chaotic in the schools and just wasn't the environment that I was looking to be in. And I finally took the opportunity to travel. And, by many metrics, my life has been really good. Like I've accomplished a lot of things. Things were good, not great, but good. And I've checked a lot of boxes, but something underneath was still unsatisfied. And I stumbled upon a men's retreat and it cracked me open, man. I didn't realize what you do when you get together with a bunch of guys. I just resonated with the man that was putting it on. And what happened there made me realize how much of my own patterns were continuing to force me to play it small and to keep it safe in my life. And this just blew the lid off of what is possible for my life, the kind of connection and depth that I can achieve, and made me realize just how much brotherhood and strong men in my life who could hold me accountable and lift me up was really missing. And so ever since that, it's kind of changed the direction of my life. And I'm really trying to help build that in the East Coast of Canada and beyond.
That's beautiful, man. So the scope of it is men's right now, but this is for everybody. We have self-sabotaging patterns that keep coming up until we can dissolve them. And so what were some of those patterns, or what were some of the techniques maybe that you learned from this men's retreat that help you now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as far as patterns, dude, there's all kinds. And the thing is most of the time, well, they live in our unconscious. They operate in the shadows and they come from old wounds that were never addressed. And we are inherited, a series of wounds, and our parents inherited a series of wounds. So really, there's so much unconscious programming that directs our lives, and we're not actually in control. And until I can shine a light on the unconscious shadows, on the unconscious patterning, I'm not able to actually take ownership and direct my life in the direction that I desire. And for me, the way that showed up was abandoning in my relationship, avoiding the hard conversations, pulling away when things got hard, or closing off. It also looked a lot like sprinkling details of vulnerability in my life, but never the depth of how things were impacting me. And I craved to be known. I craved to be understood. And only leaning into this work did I ever realize that I never really gave people a true opportunity to see me, because I never shared the depth of how things were impacting me in my life. And so that always put a ceiling on my capacity to lead, on my capacity to actually step in. I was self-sabotaging my own greatness. It looked like not taking risks. And it looked like, all of these things that just put a cap on my potential, and not having the hard conversations or feeling the emotions that were needed to get to the breakthrough phase of the clarity that I needed to actually move forward with my life with a radical sense of responsibility. And so the kind of practices, man, that varies widely in terms of what can be practiced and tapped into. But a few that come to mind, it's like, one is very basic and fundamental, but it's not always easy, is nervous system regulation. And most of us are actually just reacting to the stimulus in our external environment all the time. We're not able to have that space between the external stimulus and the response that we choose. And so we're acting on default patterning, default mode all of the time. And so the more I can regulate my nervous system with breathwork practice or meditation or journaling to get a clearer picture on what's happening from when the stimulus comes in and changing that default mode, I'm able to choose at that point. I can finally start to choose a different response. And that gives me sovereignty. That gives me agency and ability to redirect my life. Above that is conversations, having deeper conversations. Not, as men, we tend to try and fix. Somebody brings us a problem, a partner brings us a problem, and we want to fix it. We want to resolve it. We have the logical way to do it. And really what I've learned is that's not allowing a person to feel safe, seen, or understood. And I'm coming in there thinking I'm going to fix something, and I'm leaving there with more conflict than was entered. And so my capacity to actually bring empathy and learn how to listen and not steamroll somebody's experience thinking I'm doing them a favor. So those are just a few, and I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot. So my watch face, the quote, it's from Viktor Frankl, and it says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space, we have the freedom to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I messed it up a little bit. We have the power to choose our response. But exactly what you're saying, right? And response instead of react. Responding or reacting are two totally different things. The reacting is usually just the subconscious, and you got it. Whitey Bulger is an American gangster from Boston, and he has a quote. He says, I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me. And
Yes.
yeah. And then logic. I like that part of that point. I don't want to overskip that point about the logic with the man, the masculine. That's what we're always trying to do, right? And then the feminine or the female energy is more feeling it. Like, and you said it, right? If you're just trying to fix it with logic all the time, then you're not feeling, the people's not feeling seen or heard or safe. So I definitely love that. And then you said you had a couple more, but you're going to bounce it back to me. Do you have those couple more off your head, or?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even just doubling down on that communication piece, because I think it's so critical. It being able to actually, so holding space, for example, what I use as a working definition now for holding space is being able to have one foot firmly rooted in regulating my own nervous system and one foot firmly rooted in the other person's experience. And when I can actually hold both of those at the same time, that's when I create connection. I'm not trying to change somebody else. I can be there with them. Because when I'm trying to fix somebody or just tell them it's going to be okay or diminish their experience or try and rescue them, I'm making it about me because I'm not able to stay regulated and rooted in my own experience. So I need their suffering to end so that I can be back to my homeostasis. And really, what I've learned from that is it robs people, again, of their own sovereignty, their own innate wisdom, and their own capacity to lead their lives. If I just sit there and hold space and breathe and use the practices of regulating my nervous system through breath and meditation and journaling, and I'm clear, well, then I can hold space and ask the right questions and just co-regulate with that person for them to actually get clear on their answers and where they're leading their lives. And I think that is such a fundamental practice of restoring sovereignty in the people that we're around and in our lives. And I think that's a true mark of a leader. Another piece is, being able to develop the capacity to confront what we're avoiding. I think a lot of us are misguided, are feeling lost, are feeling stuck. And I've come to believe that on the other side of what I'm resisting, the thing that I'm not willing to feel, the conversation I'm not willing to have, the action I've not been willing to take, is actually the clarity that I'm desiring to experience. So the second I start to feel that emotion and I open the door, I open my heart to that vulnerability, I have that conversation that's been scaring me, that clarity that I'm looking for, that kind of satisfaction is what's waiting for me on the other side of that. And being able to practice healthy modes of confrontation, like at our retreats, we practice ritual combat. So I'll lead men to be able to actually build them up to practice strapping on the boxing gloves. And, we're holding the container for all the men, and 2 men step in, and some guys' experience have been terrible. They've fought and they've had really bad experiences in high school, or some have never fought and avoided it their whole lives. And to step into a ring and put a 2-minute timer on and actually, what's alive? Some guys are coming in shaking. Some guys are coming in totally numb and not sure what to feel. To be able to practice feeling the intensity, staying in the ring, staying with it, keeping a smile on your face, staying with your breath in the heat of the moment, is this ability to actually strengthen the nervous system, because you'll actually start to understand what happens when somebody swings at me. Do I back off? Do I cower? Do I come in extra hard? Because that's always going to reflect how we react in life. How I do one thing is how I do all things. And so we can actually look at the physical practices, look at these very tangible, practical pieces to better understand how we're showing up in life. If I want to be able to stand in the feet in the fire with my partner or with somebody else in my working space or whatever, and I'm not practicing this, then I'm not going to be prepared for the moments that I'm surprised when it comes up.
Yeah. I love the first answer you gave about like holding space, but the way you said it, having one foot in both sides, I never heard that. And it's like, oh my God, that's how to explain what holding space means. Beautiful.
It's been my working definition. I had to do that for myself.
Yeah, no, that's great because I'd say holding space and meet the client where they're at, but part of meeting the client where they're at is making sure that you're grounded and it's not about you. There's something called the Karpman triangle, Krpman. It's the person's name, but Karpman triangle, or you can type victim triangle and find out, but it shows all different ways. Like, it's not just like me. It's also like, oh, look, now I'm helping somebody and nobody's recognizing me. There's like 3 different points, but yeah, I digress. So tell us more about the men's retreat. I'm sure it's not just all boxing.
No, it's not all boxing. I try and layer in a few different things. So I think traditionally, you look at any society throughout human history, and if you go back, all of them had rites of passages to initiate youth into adulthood and adults into elderhood, and the elders held space for the youth to do these. There was always some kind of initiatory experience that marked phases of life. And as you can see, if you look around in our society, you'll see a lot of adult bodies with adolescents that are running the show. And I think that's reflective of the lack of initiation and the lack of proper guidance and mentorship in our society. And so really what a men's retreat is a place to start to rekindle that flame, start to connect to something that's truly ancient and bring it into a future setting, into something that's appropriate for the modern man. And what that looks like is providing a space for men to start to actually look at where they're leading their lives. What do I want? As a man, where am I leading myself? Where am I leading my family? Where am I leading my community? And what vision do I want that to look like, to feel like, so that I can actually get clear on how I want to embody that? It also looks like celebration. Learning how to be able to dance and sing and express ourselves through the body, through the voice, through play, through curiosity, and actually start to activate that sense. we do a lot of connection and communication work, practice, holding space for another man, eye gazing, regulating the breath, learning to actually, again, most of us share details of the experiences of things in our lives, and very few of us ever share the depth of how things are impacting. And so a lot of men could talk about all the problems that are happening in their relationship or all the messed up stuff that's happening at work or in society. But very few of us actually talk about how that's impacting us. And until we create that space where I can start to uncover the depth of how these things are impacting me, I'm not likely going to do something constructive to change it. And the power of that is when I step into a circle and voice what's going on in my life. Well, now I have a really clear reflection, because there's a real squirmy part of us that likes to defer responsibility. I like to blame and criticize and judge everything outside of me for what's going wrong in my life. And in these spaces, that starts to get cut away. All of a sudden, there's a mirror who's reflecting back. This is my bullshit. This is my stuff that I've been running from. And all the problems that are going on in my life, I have the capacity to do something about. I don't need to keep blaming. And so this is an opportunity for real conversations, sharing the depth of what's going on, practice regulating our nervous system through these kind of different embodiment practices, and having the hard conversations and getting the accountability. Okay, that's what's going on in your life. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to move through? And I'll also move into like deeper processes to help men do some inner excavation work to actually understand, okay, what pattern is continuing to come up in your life? You encounter conflict in your life and you avoid, or you judge, or you get really anxious and lean in. Where has this pattern happened earlier in your life? Likely in our childhood, there's been experiences that have been stuck into our nervous system that continue to perpetuate a response today. So if I can start to understand through some clarifying processes and better questions and holding space for a man to do that deeper inner excavation work and say, well, what did my little boy not have? What is he scared of? What are the stories? What not enoughness, or what stories did he inherit as a child that are operating my current day lived situation? And how am I going to rewrite that narrative and remind that scared little part of me that's still stuck in running the show at some point that there's a man at the helm now? And I know that part of me is scared, and I know that part of me is worried, and I know that part of me has all the excuses, but there's a man here, a man that little boy needed, and to kind of integrate all of those parts of me into the present so that I can lead my life and I can be the one in charge.
Wow. Yeah, we do this a couple different ways. Sometimes it's writing a letter to that child, just letting them know that we're safe now, everything worked out fine. But sometimes you also have to go all the way back and hold that kid's hand and bring them forward to the now. And it's powerful. I'm glad that there's more things like this happening. And so I know you have a retreat coming up in a month or so. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure, man. Yeah, we have a retreat coming up in January, end of January. Good way to kick off the new year, set the tone, set 2025 right. And it's open to 16 other men, and every guy's got their own little private cabin at this beautiful retreat space out on 40 acres of land. And it's a really incredible spot for men to come and leave all of the day-to-day grind and all the things that are going on and have a fresh perspective and have a chance to reevaluate where they're at in their life and look at where they're playing it safe and look at all the things that are going on and everything we've discussed and have a chance to actually grab the reins. And, one of the things I find about this work is when men enter into this, a lot of them are deer in the headlights. They're not even realizing how much they need. But so many men have internalized that they're broken, that they're doing this all alone, that there's something wrong with them. And beyond even all the depth practices and all these things, just to realize in a shared space that I'm not alone, that I'm not broken, that there's not just something wrong with me, that I have the capacity to change. That is this catalyst for a man to be able to lead in his life, to lead in his family. And so it's really held in an experience that we've got excellent facilitators there, myself and a few others who are very experienced in holding space, in helping men both learn how to communicate better, to understand what's going on in their lives and lead into the depths of what's going on and emerge on the other side with a plan of action, with clarity, to be able to bring that back into their families, bring it back into their communities, and take charge. So it's really a powerful reset and refocus.
Yeah, and that's a good time to do it. Right near the beginning of the year, you can plan out your whole year. Get out in the woods, away from all the noise, and the cell phone off at the front door or something. I'm looking at your Instagram, and you talk a lot about things like just pain and turning. I heard Tony Robbins one time say, "What if you could take the worst thing that ever happened and make it the best thing?" And it seems like that might be kind of a good way to capture the messages that you're talking. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think a lot of people get stuck on their pain stories and they get stuck on their stories, and your story can either be a cage or it can provide meaning for your life and how you move forward. And so you can either justify how messed up your parents were, how all these circumstances were, and continue to be a victim to the things that have happened to you and live with low agency and allow other people to be leading your life. Or you have an opportunity to reframe that and give your suffering meaning. As you said earlier, Viktor Frankl, I mean, what an incredible example of that. To be able to take suffering at the most incredible depths and find meaning and find freedom in how we define what our suffering means. It's like, there's no justification to stay stuck in our own little pity party. Yeah, you got to feel that. You need to experience it and then let it go so that you're not staying within the bars or the cage that your past experiences have made for you. And you turn those into fuel. Like that can, Robert Bly says this really well. And he says, a man's wound is his greatest gift. And that's just profound.
Rumi has one similar, like the wound is the place where the light can enter, or something like that.
Yes.
And then Wayne Dyer, you were just talking. You didn't say Wayne Dyer, but something you just said. He has one, and it's like, if you want to fight for your limiting beliefs enough, you can keep them. Like, go ahead, right? And so that's it. My company, the tagline is "Your story is your superpower," and that's why. It's like, not because like there's a victim story. Everyone could have a victim story, right? But what do you do with it, right? So you take that, turn it into something else. I had this decade-long dark night of the soul, and I don't even really talk about it as much. Like now my story has changed so much that I almost forget that person. Not that I forget it, but it's just I don't even want to go there anymore.
Totally, man. And I think what you're talking about too is this thing that's starting to resonate more and more with me is getting clear on who is the man. Like as I get clear on the vision that I want and the where I actually want to live my life. Like you ask most men what they want. Most can't even tell you what they want. I mean, that says something in and of itself. But once you get clear on what you want, you need to get clear on who is the man that is doing these things. Who do I need to become to do that? Is that the guy that finds an excuse for everything that's going wrong, or justifies every poor behavior, or justifies all the place that I abdicate responsibility in my life? Or am I the one that takes that compost, takes all that shit and turns it into something? And how do I need to show up? What are the values? What are the characteristics? What do I need to embody as a man to be able to actually live out that vision? And, I'm going to fall flat on my face inevitably. And what brotherhood's done for me actually has shortened the gap between when I fall flat on my face and how quickly I pick myself back up. Because I'm surrounded by men who say, hey, I know what your vision is and I know who you say you want to stand for. And right now you're not. So how can I help you? And what do you need to do to come back into that energy, to come back into your presence, to come back into your power? And it's just like that, man. It's really a quick shakeup. Yeah.
I'm with you. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it the refractory period. How can we shorten the refractory period? And the good example is anyone in a relationship, right? You get in a fight with your wife and then you start ruminating about it for the rest of the day, when really you could just walk in the other room, take a deep breath, reset, come back, shorten the refractory period.
Yes. I love that. And, like even in that, a little nugget for any man who's in conflict right now with their partner and they're like, well, it just keeps going. It's like, try this. If your partner brings something to you and they're going on and, to you, it's not making logical sense and it gives something, just like first of all, take a breath and say, sorry, baby, like I didn't hear you. I'm going to take a breath. I want to just be this, and I want you to share again so that I can hear you. And if you hear it in your own words and in an authentic way, like ground your energy, feel it, be with it, be with her or him, and say, yeah, baby, that makes sense. I feel that. Like, tell me more. What do you want me to do? How can I support? And that alone will solve like 90% of conflict, just to create that space where they're heard.
100%. That's a love language. It's 5 love languages, right? And that's one is just they want to be seen and heard. I think you said about becoming the thing that you want, and this is the manifestation of everything. And so my example is always marathon, right? I want to run a marathon 4 months from now, but I have to become the different person that I am today. Today, I can't get up and go. I probably could, but I'm not going to get up and go run a marathon today. But can I become the person? And what does that look like? So between now and then, you hold the vision. So you're saying your buddies hold the vision for you too, if you forget. And sometimes we do forget how powerful we are. Today I was running on a treadmill, and after 5 minutes, I'm like, man, I'm so tired. I'm not going to go. What are you talking about? You're going to run for 3 hours, all right? So what's 5 minutes? And we forget this, and we forget our past. And so it's important for me personally, to write things down. And at this time of the year, I'm going back on my journals and looking and being like, whoa, that was just in 1 year. But if you have that vision and you steadily hold that vision, you can collapse the timeline. If it's a 5-year vision, you can collapse it, because as you're looking at it, you're pulling yourself towards it, but you're pulling it to you. And so with that vision, knowing what you want, the question you said was that most men don't even know what they want. So now this is the Phase 4 podcast, and Phase 4 in the 6th phase meditation by Vishen Lakhiani is all about creating a future 3 years from today. So where is Stu Murray 3 years from today?
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. And I fully agree. And just to touch on that piece that you said around manifestation, like it's so powerful and it's so incredible, and it becomes ineffective when it's not rooted in aligned action. And I think that's so important to just double down on, is like, make sure that once you have your vision, that you are actually cultivating aligned action and getting clear on what your quarterly objectives are, and the daily actions and the habits that are going to drive that forward. Because otherwise it becomes untethered and just a pipe dream. So that said, for Stu, 3 years from now, man, we have an online community called the Brotherhood, and that's actually just opened up in the last 3 months, and it's been on fire. The guys in there are engaged, and that community is going to continue to grow. So 3 years from now, there's going to be 500 men in there supporting one another. We actually have a framework that I've been developing and building in with this ground floor called the Becoming Blueprint, that helps men actually get clear on where they're wanting to lead their lives. So it's that really science-backed aspect of manifestation, driven by clear objectives and daily actions, and then held by the accountability and support of brotherhood. And we're going to be having big retreats continuing to go on. We've had 6 in the last year and a half, and there's going to be bigger, more powerful retreats. We're leading a movement here. I envision 1,000+ strong men from Eastern Canada and beyond, who are connecting in the flesh, who are going on hikes, who are leading in their lives, in their communities, in their families, coming together in brotherhood, both online, in retreats, and in person in their communities. So big things are happening, man.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think for like a while, like let's say the past decade or so, and this could go for men any age, but I'm even 14 years old, 18 years old, 24 years old. There was a whole Me Too movement, right? Which that's one thing. But then after that, so the men, like young kids, weren't dating or anything. They're not sure if they're allowed. Then all of a sudden, COVID, now you're locked down. So like the youngest, like the 8-year-olds who are now 18 or 20, they are the ones who are suffering probably the most and isolating themselves and just looking around like, what do I even do? What am I allowed to do? Am I allowed to call a girl? Like all sorts of stuff and then COVID compounds it. You're isolated. You're going through university or high school, whatever, at your most the time when you should be rebelling and going and doing life, right? You're stuck at home in your room and your parents are there and you have your classroom is an online Zoom room with just 25 black screens, and I don't know, man. So it's the time, it seems like, for this.
It is, dude. And to that point, like there seems to be a growing polarization between the sexes and a lack of understanding. And a lot more men are disconnecting. A lot more men are electively choosing to stay single, be it the incel movement or the black pill or the manosphere. Like there are a growing number of men who do not feel seen or recognized and feeling more and more pushed to the sidelines. And I get that. I get that some of the anger and some of the frustration that has arisen from feminism and from all of these things being taken out on men who are, getting just caught in the crosshairs. However, what are you going to do about it? Like that's where we need to revive the places where men can actually lead, where men can feel seen, where men can feel supported. Because I'll tell you this, like just pulling out and not engaging in relationships or not interacting with women or just saying all women are this or that, it's a cop-out. And it's a really weak way to go about it. And I think it shows the lack of mentorship. Pardon?
You end up, you had to backfire because then you end up more isolated and then you're in big trouble then.
It's a vicious loop. And you're going to find all the things to continue to justify pulling away and not leaning in. And it's like, okay, again, going back to those stories, you will find the evidence that will prove you right. But is that what I want for your life?
Cognitive bias. There's a book called Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. And for anyone who's all doom and gloom about the world, this book just takes every single area of life and shows how abundant we are, how fortunate, blessed we are, how crime is down, wars are down, all sorts of stuff. It even goes into that topic about women, men in the workplace, and how, like, even in schools, women have more degrees than men. Women are moving into more power positions than men in companies. And like just some of the things we see in the mainstream aren't even true. That's what I guess I'm saying there. But this is a great book, Enlightenment Now.
Yeah, man. And it is the case, back when they passed Title IX for women's rights in the 70s, that was a monumental achievement for women's equality and giving women access to the right education and being able to move into post-secondary. And what's not really actually being discussed is the gap that women had at that time is actually more significant, but flipped around. There are more men falling through the cracks now than there were women back in the 70s that were not making it.
That's what I was trying to say, but you said it so simple.
But it's the truth. And like, again, it's not, I'm trying to really stop giving a 10, 20-minute preamble about how important it is to justify women's rights and how important that is before I talk about men's health as well. Because it's not about one or the other. We're all human, and really a rising tide lifts all ships. And I'm here to advocate on the basis of humanity. And we got to recognize that men are falling through the cracks. Men are killing themselves at 3 to 1, sometimes 4 to 1. 80% of the deaths around the world, suicides, are men. That's a staggering amount of men that are choosing to end their lives.
Yeah, I saw some stats in Canada after COVID, and it was just shocking, sad, disgusting. I don't even know what the word was, and very silent about it. Like you hear mental health, but you don't hear that part of it, which was crazy. I'm wondering, we want to play some speed round. I'm looking at your Instagram and just the thumbnails, and like I'm gonna just shout out the words and you tell me about that. But like one of them, are you willing to do what most men won't?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, what's your standard, right? Like we have such low bar in society. It's like I can look around and like how many people, what's our obesity statistics? What's our levels? Like we've accepted and tolerated such a low bar, but I refuse to play to that standard. And so it's like, if you want to achieve what most men don't, you have to be willing to do what most men won't. And that's to sum it up, that's the essence of that.
Beautiful. And there's something in there, right? Where if you're stuck in that group of no one, whatever. You're down here, you're with a bunch of people. They're all just going to stay. But once you move up to the next level, there's a lot more room and it's just a lot easier. That's my experience anyway.
Totally, man.
The next one, the hidden dangers of unchecked lust.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot about how our energy's being diffused, man. We are, I think even lust, like I would expand this not only to sexual. I mean, look at the porn industry. Look at just how much money is flooding into really low level ways of satisfaction and pleasure. And I think beyond lust is how quick of dopamine hits we're getting. I can instantly get, whether it's social media and all these women on my screen or going onto porn or going and do all these things, every time I'm chasing quick dopamine hits, I'm overriding my capacity to lead to something bigger. And I think it was Abraham Lincoln who's talked about discipline being choosing our long-term desires over their short-term pleasures. And that's really our capacity to develop discipline. And we override that every time that I go to get that quick dopamine hit, every time I do this. And my capacity as a man to be trustworthy, to be directed, to be disciplined, all the things that make me attractive as a man, I start to lose those when I'm chasing quick hits of dopamine all over the place.
Amazing. So it's not about lust, but it's the same idea. So I heard that Joe Dispenza again, he's talking about little kids playing video games and they get to shoot the guy and kill the guy and they get the dopamine. And then it happens so much so fast that it's almost like you just deplete it and then they can't enjoy a beautiful sunrise or a sunset because of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting. Like dopamine, the molecule, it's often regarded as like a pleasure piece, but really dopamine is the molecule of motivation. And learning to train ourselves to do hard things will develop our capacity for dopamine. So it's going to be really hard. If you've been somebody who's pursued comfort and convenience over challenge and discomfort, well, then it's going to feel very difficult. But the more you start to push through, I have actually a framework where it's like a push-pull framework, going to the gym, for example. If you've not gone to the gym, it's going to be a push to get there. And it's going to be a push to get there for a while. You're going to need to stay disciplined. You're going to need to stay consistent. You're going to have to go there when you're tired. You're going to have to set up a time. But at some point, that's going to change. And you could go a couple days without going to the gym and you say, I need the gym. I know how more dysregulated I am, how impatient I am. Like I can't not go to the gym now. So for me, that's a pull. And I think that's a framework people can work with. Anything you want to develop, any practice you want to develop, any discipline, it's going to take effort and consistency to push through that. But at some point, it will become a pull.
I love this, man. So Andrew Hooverman talks about it. He said, and I don't know how they can measure this one, but he said, when there's something you don't want to do, it actually benefits you more than when you want to do it. So like if you like going to the gym, that's great. You're going to get bigger. But if you don't like it, when you pull yourself through those workouts and you do it, even when you don't feel like it, it actually benefits you more. Cold showers, sleep on the floor once in a while, all sorts of stuff.
Totally. And, like doing that to start your day, whether it's a cold shower or some breath work or something that you don't want to do. Like I've been doing cold showers for quite a long time now. And there's still not a day that goes by that I want to do it. But I do it. I just crank the thing on and I allow it to hit me and I go longer and I regulate my breath. And I'm starting my day doing something I didn't want to do intentionally. So I'm setting myself up and I'm winning right from the start. So it's like, okay, I'm starting my day doing something I didn't want to do. What else is it that I need to take on that's going to move me forward that I don't want to do? I already have a stack of evidence that proves I can.
The evidence is key. I do push-ups in the morning right out of bed and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. But it does. It starts you off with a win. It gives you energy. You start, I just feel way more energized. And then I've noticed there's seasons where you don't do it. And it's like, man, you don't have the same kind of up and go. But I think that there's a good one you have here. It's like sacrificing dreams. It's not about the lust though. This is about everything, I think. Sacrificing dreams for short-term pleasures. You talked about it a little bit, but like delayed gratification, the marshmallow test, all these things that are benefit. It's compound interest. Same with money, right?
Yeah, man. That compound interest is applies well beyond money. And it's again, that's the essence of discipline is knowing that I got to make a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain here. And it's become really hard in the age of comfort and convenience. I mean, I got a little mini split over me there. Like, my whole environment is regulated. So I don't have the suffering or the struggling of our ancestors. So I need to actually work extra hard to maintain my discipline, to maintain my focus. And if I don't have the clarity of what I'm working towards, and I don't have that focus on what I'm going to actually bring in, well, I'm going to be just floating on the sea without any direction, with no pointing in no way. So it's going to be I'll be floating in a sea of irrelevance.
No phase 4 when that happens. So as we begin to wind down, if this episode resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share, follow, and reach out to Stu, especially if you're a man and you're interested in those retreats that he's bringing on. It's needed, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I saw women retreats all the time, and I haven't seen too many men's, but as I'm looking at it and thinking about it, yeah, it's needed, right? Sometimes I'm okay because I'm pretty vulnerable. I could go in with a bunch of women and start crying and talking, but a lot of men aren't, and they need that. When they see a group of men doing it, maybe it's more helpful. I guess I would ask as we wind down, I kind of let the guests take it wherever they want. So if you have a message of hope, a message of inspiration, if you have something to sell it. Wherever you want, just take it.
Cool, man. Thank you. I think that one of the biggest things is recognizing that for too long we've bought into one of the most dangerous rules of men. If you're struggling, don't talk about it. And so many men have just dealt with that and deal with their problems, and they continue to move forward and keep on trudging and keep doing these things. And like, men are incredible. And we need to revive these ancient structures, these ancient ways of eldership and mentorhood and rites of passage, and come together as men and celebrate and get clear on what we want and where we're going and support each other. Like, my reflection to you is, you're not alone. You're not broken. You don't need to lead your life alone. And in fact, if you come together in brotherhood and lean in and do that inner excavation and get that support and accountability, you will accelerate your growth and your impact in your life, in your family, in your career, more than you ever imagined possible. So stop waiting and stop finding excuses and start taking a step in, either having vulnerable conversations with men in your life, or find a men's group in your community, or join the brotherhood that we have within our community here, or attend a men's retreat and start to commit to a change. Invest in your future, invest in yourself.
Yeah, I love it. There's a quote by Bernard Shaw. It's kind of like the Whitey Bulger one, but it says, like, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world around him. The unreasonable man makes the world adapt to him. So therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. And the message there would be, don't just settle for the norm. Be unreasonable in your excellence. This thing here, this is just a calendar, right? And you see all the little graphs or whatever. So that's the way to keep the evidence. And so it starts out, if you're just beginning, maybe you start with journaling, and that's the only one. And then you add some all the time. But eventually you get to a bunch, and like, if you see it, right, it's all full. And so there you go. You got the same thing. So it becomes the evidence. And so then it doesn't even matter what you actually think. What matters is, like, no, actually, look, this is what I did. This is the proof. And that's a huge part.
That's right. Well, yeah, and that's it. It's like, you know what? You can sit there and you can look in the mirror and give yourself the affirmations. And I'm realizing there's absolutely a power to that. Joe Dispenza's work and all of these things. And you want to really build unshakable confidence? Build a stack of evidence that proves your doubts otherwise.
Yeah. You silence the doubts, right? Have you read Think and Grow Rich?
Yes.
So I'm got this new one. It kept coming up in my awareness. People would just, whatever, on the screener, I ask for books, and it's called Outwitting the Devil. And it's Napoleon Hill again, but it was released in like 2010. His family, his wife didn't even want to release it after he died because of the idea of the book. It's a lot of the same things from Think and Grow Rich, but he's having a conversation with the devil. I don't know if it comes from a dream or it's almost like he has the devil on a witness stand and the devil can't lie to him. So he's like, how did you do this? And it's just, but great book. And it brings me also to another book that keeps coming in my awareness. You said is it Iron John? Can you tell
Yes.
me about this book? Because I definitely got to read it. It keeps coming up over and over again. So that's a sign.
Definitely got to read it. That Robert Bly and a couple others were instrumental in actually reviving the modern day men's movement. So it was Robert Bly and a few others had their pulse on the rise of feminism and trying to understand where this was coming from. And what Iron John is actually a fable from like an old European fable that he shares and unpacks. And, like it was a really mytho-poetic. These guys were writers and really creative individuals. And he pulls out the journey of a man through this fable and really highlights a few key issues. And that book, along with King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, were instrumental in resparking the men's mythopoetic movement and inspired a generation of men to start asking for more. What does it really mean to be a man today? And how do we revive these ancient and traditional ways? So, yeah, I mean, it's both an incredible book in and of itself, and it's also a real interesting historical pivot for what started the men's mythopoetic movement.
Very cool. Yeah, it keeps coming up. So definitely I got to check it out. But
Yes.
I gave a speech about a month ago not even 3 weeks ago at the Rotary Club. And I was asking the guy who invited me, I'm like, should I wear like a suit? Should I wear a shirt and tie? Right? I didn't know. And he's like, no, but he told me that back in the day, they used to get fined if they didn't show up wearing, and women weren't even allowed, but men would be fined if they didn't have a shirt and a tie on.
Wow.
Yeah, it was shocking. But uh, I think maybe what else? Okay, so what other things? I see one-on-one. Let me actually go. I saw your link tree looks pretty cool. So you got join the brotherhood. Okay, Warrior Toolkit, the free tool. Share that with us.
Sure, man. And that's actually going to be shifting here shortly. The Warrior Toolkit is all just a simple framework and some practices to help start regulating your nervous system, getting out of fight or flight and into a place where you can actually start making conscious decisions. Soon that's going to be the Becoming Blueprint framework. So actual strategy for men to be able to get clear on where they're going and an actionable framework to start moving that forward. The retreats are in there as well. And then I also do one-on-one coaching. So for men who are looking to go a little bit deeper dive, maybe not comfortable in the group setting just yet, or have specific issues that they want to unlock and move forward in their lives, I work one-on-one also with men.
Amazing. Before I ask my final question, is there anything else that we didn't get to that you want to touch on?
Well, man, I've really enjoyed riffing with you. I love your insights. I love your vision. I love all of the perspectives that you bring, and I'm sure we could riff for hours. So I don't think there's much more that I'll add on this one. And just, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. So my final question is, where can people reach you?
Yeah, they can reach me on Instagram at I am Stu Murray, as well as on YouTube, I am Stu Murray. And we've got our website, brother.life.
Brilliant. Stu, I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
JP, real pleasure, man. Thank you.